As we've been commissioning work online since Anne launched in 2009, and it's been really interesting actually to chat to you and reflect on this body of work as our lives have really shifted dramatically online.
I think my first question is about Anne's position within interrogating the web and how you think that's developed over the years.
I think the driving force has been, working primarily with artists who are thinking about the internet as a creative material or a space as a tool in which to interrogate the systems or technology or the politics that sit behind that, and thinking about how the internet has evolved from this utopian ideal to a more centralized and commercial model. For example, the Pirate Cinema by Nicolas, Maigret and Brendan Howell, we commissioned that in 2013. The work showed files being transferred in real time using data from the Pirate Bay's 100 top videos for that day. So what you actually see and experience with the work is this mashup of fragmented video or torrent files. It's also showing how the data files are being transferred to and from across the globe. So I think it's really interesting in terms of being visual and playful, but showing a complex global system of how these peer-to-peer networks actually work. And then another example I've been thinking about is How to Appear Offline Forever, which was a web-based collage by Sebastian Smeeg. This is like a real contrast to the Pirate Cinema, much more meditative, and it considers access and colonialism in a networked world. So the work was responding to a proposal for internet drones that Facebook and Google were working on in 2015. And the idea was to enable access to the internet for underprivileged parts of the world. But the challenge to that being that this would be a limited or a commercialized form of access. So Sebastian developed this collage online, working with people from Zambia and Sri Lanka, where Facebook and Google were conducting the research, then contrasting this with stories from Silicon Valley. So asking people to retell personal experiences of going online for the first time, and also reflecting on possible futures. And you can still explore the work online. It's still live.
Hi, I am a 36-year-old national from Zambia. I met with a girl who had then come from England. She is the one that first introduced me to the internet. So
I think the curatorial style has always been a bit of a leap of faith, for ourselves as producers, but also audiences to experience something different, because we're often testing something that we're not exactly sure about how it's going to work or how audiences will engage, and it's only through that work that we all gain that understanding collectively, and you sort of appreciate the impact of that research and line of thinking. I do personally more reflecting on that now and seeing how those projects connect together, whereas at the time possibly we wouldn't have seen those connections.
I find that really interesting, and I use the word vulnerable in a way that should feel liberating, I guess, because we don't always feel like we get to see behind the scenes, and that's part of Anne's style, is to, like you said, this leap of faith for everyone involved and not just the audience.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of risks, some small, some bigger, in how we produce these projects, and that's what makes it exciting, for me personally to do that, and I think for the artists and the teams that we work with. Yeah, so another work that I've been thinking about recently is dark content with Eva and Franco, and it focuses on the role of and experiences of online content moderators, so those individuals who are responsible for removing offensive content from social media sites and sort of shielding us from that. Then they produced a series of anonymized videos that you could only experience by going on the dark web.
The constant thought is that someone, somewhere, is suffering because of this video being public, so it is easier to just remove it, so that person can go on living without having this out there.
Yeah, I think when this work was happening in 2016, is very much behind the scenes, and people may not be aware that the content that they were seeing on social media sites was moderated and checked. So someone had to see the worst of the web, so they didn't have to. If you look at the elections in 2016 and 2020 and how commercial companies like Twitter being pushed to take on the social responsibility for what's on their sites and the political implications or the well-being implications of that. So Donald Trump's tweets are now being flagged that they haven't been fact-checked, or it might be fake news, which is, you know, a really interesting development. It doesn't go far enough, I think, but it's interesting to see that progression.
I think a good question to end on is, what's Anne's vision for the future and where do we go from here?
I think it's a really interesting point. You know, our lives have changed significantly in the past year. We've all spent even more time online than we ever expected. And while it's been super challenging, I think, you know, there's really exciting potential within that to think about how we engage in the online space. And also, now that that shift's happened, that people think more about their experience of the web and what their data means, and push for having more control over their data and privacy, and push back with those large commercial organisations.
For more And Echoes content, go to andfestival.org.uk.